You're listening to Systemic Error Podcast. The failure was designed.
Trump. Deep State reveals Deep State suppressed info about China voter tampering, based on an article by Matthew Raza. Trump uses the state to sell a lie. The power is his. Donald Trump stood on a national stage and tried to convert his own defeated, legally rejected election into a foreign conspiracy story. That is the core fact. He was not a confused spectator. He was the man who lost the 2020 election, spent years trying to erase that loss, and returned to the microphone to repackage the same fantasy with the prestige of government language. This is how authoritarian politics works in plain sight. The powerful actor invents a grievance, then demands that everyone else treat it as an urgent public mystery. A lie borrowing official language. Trump's latest version of the stolen election myth was not new. What was new was the attempt to launder it through selective references to CIA reporting and declassified documents, as if pulling a sentence out of intelligence paperwork can somehow make his claim true. It cannot. It only makes the manipulation more deliberate. He did not present evidence. He presented fragments, stripped of context, then stapled them to a pre-existing fantasy. That is not disclosure. It is narrative laundering. The real crime was already committed. The article itself reminds us what actually happened after Trump lost. He launched a sustained campaign to delegitimize the election, called it stolen, pushed baseless machine fraud theories, pressured state officials to find votes, and egged on the January 6 march on Washington while urging Mike Pence to overturn the result. That is the story that matters, not Trump's latest theater. The actual institutional injury was the attempt to coerce the election system, then weaponize the lie afterward into a fundraising engine and movement identity. He reportedly raised hundreds of millions off the fraud myth. That tells you exactly what kind of politics this is. Not confusion, not error, but monetized sabotage. The trap is the point. The piece notes that critics warned the speech was a trap for journalists, and White House insiders were nervous. That detail matters. Trump understands that the media will chase the spectacle and that any live correction becomes part of the performance. He does not need the press to agree with him. He needs the press to orbit him. Jen Psaki's live fact check was accurate, but it also exposes a structural weakness in elite political communication. Correction arrives as commentary, while the lie arrives as an event. The imbalance is the point. Trump gets to set the frame, flood the zone, and force every response to happen on his terrain. Misdirection as a political technology. The article's framing is strongest when it shows how Trump blames China for the very democratic damage he spent years causing at home. That is classic misdirection. Move the audience outward. Replace domestic accountability with foreign menace. Turn an American autocrat's conduct into a story about external sabotage. This is not a side note. It is the method. When Trump talks about China undermining confidence in him, he is performing a familiar con, recasting self-inflicted democratic damage as victimhood. He does not merely lie about elections. He uses lies to reverse responsibility. The larger pattern. The deeper pattern here is not one speech. It is a durable authoritarian business model. Seize institutional power, use that power to contaminate public trust, and then profit from the wreckage by claiming to be the only honest interpreter of the chaos you created. That model survives because too many institutions still treat deliberate democratic destruction as noisy partisanship. It is not noise. It is strategy. The country does not have a problem with one overexcited politician telling lies. It has a problem with a political movement that turns those lies into infrastructure, revenue, and pressure on the state itself. Trump's speech was not evidence of confusion. It was evidence of continuity. The fraud is not the story he tells about the election. The fraud is the politics he built around never accepting that voters can reject him. You've been listening to Systemic Error. Thanks to AlterNet for today's article, with the automated voice of Lesak. Thanks for listening.